It's still far from perfect, and the special effects age this film tremendously.
Just what you've been waiting for. Movies, TV, music, and more. Follow, subscribe, stay up to date. Episodes drop every other Monday. It's the man, watch that. It's the man, watch that. It's the man, watch that podcast.
Welcome to the Matt Watch That podcast, the place for reviews, rants, and randomness. I'm your host, Matt Seroski, filmmaker, film fan. Each episode, I'm going to watch a movie or TV pilot that I probably should have seen, but never got around to. It could be a recent favorite, critic's choice, or cult classic. To join in on the conversation, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, at Matt Seroski. You can subscribe to my YouTube page where I'll post videos and clips from the show. If you have any opinions on what I've discussed, or suggestions as to what I should see next, use the hashtag MattWatchThat on social. Before we start, I wanted to talk about the TCU, Twisted Childhood Universe. For the uninitiated, a few years ago, filmmaker and producer Reese Frake Waterfield realized that some books were going into public domain and decided to put a horror twist on the tales. In the US, novels enter the public domain when their copyright expires, allowing anyone to use, reproduce, and adapt them without permission or payment. Generally, works published before 1924 are in the public domain, though newer works may enter the public domain after 70 years from the author's death or 95 years from publication. This allows for free access to classic literature and the ability to remix or republish it. The first was Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne, which became Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, a dark horror reimagining, transforming the cuddly figures of Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, and the other familiar characters into menacing, bloodthirsty killers. The movie begins after Christopher Robin leaves the 100-acre wood to go to college, abandoning his childhood friends. Without his care and attention, the animals are left to fend for themselves. As time passes, they become increasingly wild and desperate for food. Their innocence fades, and they begin to turn feral. When Christopher Robin returns years later, he finds that Pooh and Piglet have become grotesque, vengeful creatures, harboring a deep hatred for him. They begin a killing spree targeting anyone who ventures into their territory, seeking both revenge and sustenance. The film gained attention for its unique and controversial premise, as it was one of the first films to officially turn classic public domain characters into horror antagonists. Reactions were mixed, with some finding it entertaining as a dark novelty, while others criticized it for its lack of substance and over-reliance on shock value. But the movie made $5.2 million worldwide on a budget of $50,000. This allowed the filmmakers to expand the universe, starting with the sequel, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2, and spin-offs, Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, and Bambi: The Reckoning. The future looks bright for the Twisted Childhood universe, as on the docket in 2026 and beyond are Pinocchio, Unstrung, Poohniverse, Monsters Assemble, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 3, Tigger's Return, and Alice and the Mad Hatter. Look, these movies aren't good, but I never said I had good taste in horror movies, so I have to applaud the filmmaker for the foresight and the overall concept. On to the main attraction. Each review will end with a ranking out of 5 stars. 1 star is skip it, 2 stars watch at your own risk, 3 stars standard fare, 4 stars worth checking out, and 5 stars must see. Now, if I give a title 5 stars, it doesn't mean I'm comparing it to Casablanca, Jaws, or Seinfeld. I rank titles based on other movies or TV series in that genre and at that time period. Today I'm talking about Frenzy from 1972. It was directed by Alfred Hitchcock, often called the Master of Suspense, who is one of the most influential directors in cinematic history. His career began in silent films in the 1920s in Britain, where he quickly made a name for himself with films like The Lodger and Downhill. These earlier works established his signature style of placing ordinary people in extraordinary, suspenseful situations. After moving to Hollywood in the late 1930s, he achieved international acclaim with Rebecca, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Throughout the 1940s, he continued to create masterpieces such as Shadow of a Doubt and Notorious, cementing his reputation for blending psychological drama with thrilling narratives. The 1950s and 60s mark the peak of Hitchcock's creative powers and influence. During this period, he directed some of the most iconic and innovative films, including Rear Window, Vertigo, and Psycho. He revolutionized the thriller genre by experimenting with new techniques, such as the use of color and sound in a way that heightened tensions and manipulated the audience's emotions. Psycho, in particular, became a landmark film that shocked audiences with its narrative twists and pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable in a horror film. These works solidified his stature as a master of suspense and psychological storytelling, influencing countless filmmakers for decades to come. Hitchcock's legacy extends far beyond his famous films. He changed how directors approach storytelling by using innovative camera work, intricate pacing, and a deep understanding of audience psychology to build suspense. His brief, playful cameo appearances in his films became a recognizable part of his brand, turning him into a cultural icon. Even after his death in 1980, his films are still widely studied and celebrated for their technical brilliance and profound influence on cinema. He remains a timeless figure whose work continues to inspire and terrify new generations of film lovers. The screenplay was written by Anthony Shaffer, who scribed Mystery Sleuth, Supernatural Horror, The Wicker Man, and Whodunit, Murder on the Orient Express. It was based on the 1966 novel Goodbye Piccadilly, Farewell Leicester Square by Arthur LeBurn. The cast is led by John Finch as Richard Blaney, a man wrongfully accused of a series of brutal murders in London. Anna Massey plays Barbara Babs Milligan, Blaney's ex-wife who becomes one of the killer's victims, while Barry Foster portrays the charming fruit merchant Bob Rusk. Billy Whitelaw appears as Brenda Blaney, Richard's former sister-in-law and love interest, and Alex McCowan takes on the role of Inspector Oxford, the determined police detective tasked with solving the crime. The film also features supporting performances from Vivian Merchant, Barbara Lee Hunt, and Bernard Cribbins. This is something to look out for. Alfred Hitchcock was originally set to appear as a floating body in the river, but instead, he's a member of the crowd listening to the speaker on the riverbank. So let's jump into it. The story begins in London, where the city is gripped by fear due to a serial killer known as the Necktie Murderer, who strangles women with his necktie. The film's unsettling tone is immediately established when a woman's body is discovered floating in the River Thames during a public speech about cleaning up the river, a chilling contrast between civic optimism and brutal reality. The narrative quickly introduces Richard Blaney, a disgruntled, down-on-his-luck former RAF officer who is fired from his bartending job. Bitter and increasingly desperate, he visits his ex-wife Brenda, who runs a successful dating agency. Their meeting is tense, but she offers him money, establishing a complex dynamic between them. Shortly afterward, Brenda becomes the next victim of the necktie killer, and circumstantial evidence begins to point toward Richard. The police, led by Inspector Oxford, begin to build a case as all the evidence seems to point at Richard, who's now a fugitive wanted for a murder he didn't commit. The audience knows the truth and who the killer is, and is left to watch Blaney's desperate attempts to clear his name while the killer remains at large. Here's a quote without context. "Men like this leave no stone unturned in their search for their disgusting gratifications." Frenzy marks a return to the director's darker psychological roots, and is often regarded as his last great film. Released in 1972, it stands out as not only one of Hitchcock's most violent and sexually explicit works, but also as one of his most cynical. Set in a gritty, unglamorous London, Frenzy is a bleak, brutal, and blackly comic exploration of voyeurism, false appearances, and the moral decay lurking beneath ordinary lives. After the commercial and critical disappointment of Topaz, Frenzy represented a creative resurgence for Hitchcock. Unlike his more polished American thrillers, Frenzy adopts a rawer, more grounded tone. It's his first British film since the 1950s, and it shows in its setting. a grimy, lived-in London that sharply contrasts with the sanitized or romanticized cities in many early Hitchcock films. At the heart of Frenzy is the study in contrast between two men, Richard Blaney, the falsely accused protagonist, and the affable yet psychopathic killer. Hitchcock once again toys with the theme of the wrong man, a device he famously used in films like North by Northwest and The 39 Steps. But in Frenzy, the tone is far less romantic and far more fatalistic. Beneath its grim exterior, Frenzy is laced with pitch-black humor. Hitchcock uses this humor to underline the absurdity and cruelty of bureaucratic and social systems, particularly the class tensions in British society. Frenzy is not an easy film to watch, nor is it meant to be. It's a ruthless, disturbing, and darkly witty thriller that strips away the elegance of Hitchcock's earlier works and replaces it with something more visceral and morally complex. As a late-career statement, it's daring, provocative, and profoundly unsettling. A reminder that even in his final act, Hitchcock remains cinema's great master of suspense and psychological insight. Now for a little trivial trivia. This was the only movie in Hitchcock's filmography that received an R rating from the MPAA and carry an 18 certificate in the UK. Frenzy was produced by Alfred Hitchcock and distributed by Universal Pictures. It was filmed on location in London, England. The cinematography was captured by Gil Taylor, whose filmography includes political comedy Dr. Strangelove, pop musical A Hard Day's Night, supernatural horror The Omen, and sci-fi epic Star Wars Episode IV A New Hope. It was edited by John Gibson, who worked on musical comedy Little Shop of Horrors, screwball comedy A Fish Called Wanda, and romantic comedy In and Out. The score was composed by Ron Goodwin, who wrote the music for detective mystery The Alphabet Murders, fantasy adventures Gawain and the Green Knight, and war film Force 10 from Navarone. The runtime is 1 hour 56 minutes. It had a budget of $2 million and grossed $12.6 million at the box office. On the Ski Index, I give it 4 out of 5 stars. If you've seen Frenzy and have opinions on the movie, let me know what you think using the hashtag #MattWatchThat. Moving right along, each episode, I'm going to post clips that I think people should watch. It could be movie trailers, music videos, interviews, or something completely random. Search for my YouTube page and there'll be a playlist called Matt Watch That Playback. Are You Afraid of the Dark is a beloved Canadian-American anthology horror series that originally aired on Nickelodeon from 1990 to 1996 and was later revived in 1999 and 2019. The show is aimed at a younger audience, blending suspense, mystery, and mild horror, making it one of the first truly spooky TV series for kids. The show is centered around a group of young teens known as the Midnight Society, who meet in the woods at midnight to tell scary stories. The leader of the group would say submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I present, before introducing the night's tale. The stories they tell usually involve supernatural elements like ghosts, monsters, curses, or haunted places, often with a moral lesson or a twist at the end. The series was unique for its blend of creepiness and relatable characters. It had a tone that balanced the scarier elements with humor and the comforting presence of the group of friends. Are You Afraid of the Dark gained a cult following and is often cited as one of the most influential children's horror series. The show's ability to introduce kids to supernatural storytelling without being too frightening made it a formative experience for many young viewers in the 90s. The show holds a special place in pop culture and continues to resonate with audiences, whether it's through nostalgia or newer revivals. I've selected a couple of clips from the series. They're all available in the Matt Watch That Playback playlist on YouTube. Check it out. Now it's time for the recommendation. Yes, that's the word recommendation with Matt in the middle. I'm going to end each podcast with my own recommendation of a movie or TV series. Today I'm talking about Alien 3, The Assembly Cut. The production of Alien 3 was notably marred by studio interference, which significantly affected its development, tone, and final outcome. The film went through numerous script revisions before production, and there wasn't a completed version when filming started, because they had to meet their May 22nd release date. There were fluctuating budgets, often resulting in unfinished special effects, and an unstable production environment. The constant changes, lack of a clear vision, and the tug-of-war between the director and the studio resulted in a troubled and fractured final product. Thus, the need for the assembly cut. The film picks up immediately after the events of Aliens, with Ellen Ripley and her companions escaping from the alien-infested colony. However, their escape pod crashes on Fiorina 161, a remote and barren prison planet, where Ripley finds herself among a group of violent male prisoners. As Ripley adjusts to this bleak and dangerous environment, it quickly becomes clear that an alien creature was aboard the ship. It stars Sigourney Weaver, Charles S. Dutton, Charles Dance, and Lance Henriksen. It also features Brian Glover, Ralph Brown, Paul McGann, and Peter Postlethwaite. It was directed by David Fincher, who has since disowned the movie, and had no creative input into the 2003 assembly cut. But it provides a drastic different experience from the theatrical release, and apparently is more in line with his original vision of the movie. Ripley's role is enhanced with introspective scenes, exploring her trauma and psychological state. It added depth to the prisoners, making them less one-dimensional, though it's hard to empathize with men who've admittedly done horrific crimes. The origin of the alien has changed, and the creature's life cycle has a clearer explanation of the events. Even with 30 minutes of extended, alternate, and previously deleted scenes, there's better pacing with the reintroduction of key plot points and scenes that build up the tension, suspense, and dread. While the theatrical cut had moments of frenetic action, the assembly cut focuses more on the psychological underpinnings of the film, emphasizing the horror of isolation and the futility of escape. This somber and introspective approach aligns with Fincher's darker directorial style, which was obscured by studio interference in the original release. The Alien 3 assembly cut is a superior version of the film that fixes many of the issues of the theatrical release. It allows the darker, more philosophical themes of Alien 3 to come through, elevating the film beyond a mere creature feature and turning it into a meditative and tragic conclusion to Ripley's story. It's still far from perfect, and the special effects age this film tremendously. They look horrific. But beggars can't be choosers. That's all for this edition of Matt Watch That. Thanks for listening to me babble. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Matt Seroski. You can subscribe to my YouTube page where I'll post videos and clips from the show. If you have any opinions on what I've discussed, or suggestions as to what movie or TV pilot I should see, use the hashtag MattWatchThat on social. Head over to mattseroski.com for all the latest news and updates, and come back next time for the reviews, rants, and randomness. It was based on the 1966 novel Goodbye Piccadilly, Farewell Leicester Square. Oh boy, knew that was going to be a pain. Reactions were mixed, with some finding it entertaining as a novelty dark novel. Not what I meant.